Gohlke. I would like to ask him to take the floor. He is a curator and an author living in Berlin. He also runs a program in Potsdam, Potsdam. Since 2018, he's also the cultural development in a German institution. He's also an author who contributes to ArtNet magazine. He also has several projects and exhibitions both in Berlin and in Potsdam and internationally. As far as I remember, you also lecture. Since 2005, you've been a lecturer at the Academy of Fine Art in Stockholm and in Kunstschule in Berlin, right? So this is all true anyway, so warm welcome. Could you please take floor? So thank you very much for this wonderful invitation. I don't know how we can represent people or call people under this flag here. Ladies and gentlemen, your majesties, we'll be talking about how art changes the world. So I think I should start with a fairy tale. We can see that the society of artists depends on the society of technicians. So I wanted to start with a fairy tale. I was invited to carry out a certain project, also talking about art changing the world. So this change has its beginning and has a great impact. So I was invited to change school through art as well. And you can imagine a rectangular box, shoebox. So that's the school. That could represent school. Don't laugh, because schools are very often very well equipped in equipment, but their form is quite poor. So the artists reprogrammed it to make it fulfill its role, fulfill its whatever is due. So the artists asked how these spaces can be created for us to learn well if it is just a box. So everyone expected that if they bring an artist to a school, to a building like that, an ugly building like that, an artist will be creative and skillful enough to redesign and change the school. And the school I'm talking about is situated in Lusitz. So up there, wishes do not come true so easily, and people are not used to utopias. So everyone wondered how the school could be developed to become a place which will allow children to develop their passions and broaden their horizons and later on change the world around them. So the artist who was there before me, he failed to live up to the expectations because nearly entirely he spent his time on talking rather than doing things. So together with students, instead of learning them how to change the world, so what they could do, somehow guide them to do anything, what he did instead, he took a pencil and started drawing. So he didn't define anything, he didn't give any guidelines, so people were totally lost and unaware. They didn't know what to do. Once they were given materials, they decided to draw themselves. The question was how the space that we all inhabit looks, what it looks like. What should be the space that they were in need. So the thing was to activate everyone, animate, to make everyone active. What was beautiful in this process They were given also a piece of paper to draw, so all students had a vision about different places which could be implemented in these places. On the other hand, there was this artist who was observing all the places and integrated them into his own pieces. I had to have a close look at them later on, so there was this synthesis. And if in a group was not given frameworks, what we had to do was to guide them somehow. And eventually the room that was created was the most sensible visualization of democracy, in fact. We were able to plan it without any guidelines from the top. So we had a workshop, and the space that was developed was the synthesis of all those ideas. We decided to exhibit the works by students. We decided to exhibit it in a room under the stairs. So our utopia existed for 3 days before they told us to remove this installation due to fire safety reasons. But that was the first step to change the school, at least in the heads of students. When the everyone expected that the caretaker, he really didn't want to remove this. The janitor really didn't want to remove it. So instead, he observed and watched it before he was told to clean it up. So this also shows this change of attitude. So you can really materialize what happens in our heads and our artistic vision, and citizens of our citizens. So this is yet another wish from our citizens that can be brought to life. In political space, that eventually brings about some problems. Just like all processes, the artist I invited, it was the Pavel Althammer, by the way. He was the one to run this wonderful workshop. So that was reality that we eventually wanted to touch. And when the Minister for Agriculture in Brandenburg said at a certain conference that each village needs a main motive, a main theme, he was absolutely right. So I also want to highlight that every single place, every single village and district in a big city needs their own main theme, main topic. And if we don't have this theme that is several hundred years old in some old villages, if there is not something that is not if the history is not behind it, we need to develop it ourselves. So I'm running out of time and I'm talking a bit too fast. So let me show you a few practical examples.
Examples for how artistic reality changes real reality in villages. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Brandenburg Association of Artists, but as part of an independent process, an artistic invention, which was created 30 years ago when a French-Belgian artist working in Paris, who then had this utopian idea to have a centralized, for the centralized country unit of France, to have an artistic board in each and every village to work on the reality. The person charged with this task was supposed to collect the ideas coming from people and then implement them. Nouveau commanditaire. That was the title of the project. Neue Auftraggeber, what we could say in German. So the new order giver, so to speak. Here, the new order givers are exactly, this is the communities. When we look at the contemporary version of our reality, how we implement art, how we do high art, what Pavel also mentioned. About this traveling ambassador. If you would ask people if they need something like that, perhaps they would say no. But if we ignore these thoughts and ideas that it might not be something that is necessary, and we actually go and ask people what they would like to do, it turns out that it's doable, it's feasible. So a few examples. Perhaps they're going to generate more questions than they'll give answers. One of the projects from 2007, you can see here these suspiciously long projects lasting from 2007 to 2015. We do not engage in short-term projects, just 1 year long, because we are trying to overcome this impractical convention when people just give money and expect us to deliver something within a year and that's it. No, we implement our own main theme. In Trevodom we have the history, the story of a village, a Bretonian village that is and has been shrinking. But actually we know this scenario from all over Europe. The mayor's office actually moved into a school. Here you can see what the school looked like. So this is somehow also a forecast for the future. The school is falling apart. There are less and less children. The school is on the brink of being closed. As soon as the school closes, there'll be the village will cease to exist. That's what happened in Bretagne, all over the place, and eventually we delivered and created something like this, the mediators. We work with the mediators, not with curators, but with mediators. So it's the mediation that we use as a tool more often. And for over a year, our mediators were exploring how to translate the ideas provided by the students into art. And you could actually try to reflect, since the school is to be closed, since there are fewer and fewer children, we could say that this was the problem of the village, so that's their something that they have to deal with. But actually, as soon as we involved everybody in the discussion, there emerged the ideas, and there was a French architect which decided to join our project. The ideas for what makes this place worth living in, and the idea was that if we see what's worth our while, we will stay. The same goes for our workplaces. People tend to think that the beauty of natural environment is not an important factor. People, when they look for new jobs, they consider the proximity of schools and other facilities. And here, since the school was to be closed, and it has not been repaired for a long time, so it was pretty decrepit. then the people didn't want to attend it. And then there was this idea to transform the school into something that would be used by a greater public, senior citizens, other people who would like to learn. And so people were starting to think about the school as a center of ideas, ideas development. And when all these people came together, they soon created their joint common workplace where they started to work together. So working from the bottom up, including designers and architects in this process, as well as other experts, they were able to create a cooperative space, which actually became a multifunctional space. And because we're also talking about the administrative challenge here, political and administrative challenge here, and this village was to be part of Île-de-France, to cease to be an independent organizational unit. I think the representative of the ministry, when they came to visit this project, I think this was the first time when they actually saw the people they rule. So whatever you might call this school, this is what emerged out of this project. Is it art? It's not important for the inhabitants of Trébenon, of the village. For me, it's also not important. What is important is that what they created, enabled a kind of collaboration between children and parents, and that it's a space that makes it work for parents bringing their children to school, for the children who are brought to school, because children can just actually enter this space and together with the parents, and there is something happening there. When we think about the ideas that we learned about, here we see how things that were imagined possible started somehow to generate new ideas. Since the school was going to collapse anyway, we could create a completely new space out of it, a collaborative space. This is the message that we are trying to get across to the politicians, to people working in the public administration. And we also want to tell them why it takes so much time, why the meetings need so much material to work with. Before my microphone is cut off and I'm hijacked, this is Krazas Avat from the unemployment center. It's a very small association, but quite powerful. It's very active. They were to be removed from the center of this location. They had their own building next to a museum. So it was, they had this building which was located in a very attractive part of the city, next to the culture street, next to the church. They had their own garden space. And of course, obviously the idea was to remove them and have something else placed there. But they wanted to stay there, and to co-decide, we opened an open call. When we approached people, we called on them to come forward, because without them there will be no project. And then we had this group of idea makers and decision givers, decision takers, coming together. Here, the unemployment center and the local school decided to open up a new center for the unemployed people. This is something that we formulated as a wish, and we also developed a document listing our ideas, presenting realistic, powerful expectations that we have towards this place to be created in the future. It's not about the permanent change or changes that would be radical, but we wanted for these changes to be beneficial. For example, the students wanted to transform this garden space, which was pretty decrepit, into a new space for activization of the unemployed. We wanted to see the unemployed not as people who need to be helped or assisted at all times, but some people who can contribute something. As you can see, the students were pretty delighted to work in the garden, and that's what they created. The whole process. Katrin Jenkins, who is a mediator working on the spot, collaborating with Pat Buchanan and other experts. Pat Buchanan has never been working with gardens or any public buildings. She specialized in sculpture. But we looked for people who wanted to do something for themselves, for their own use. And then it turned out that if the state does not intervene and create obstacles, we can have great ideas. We can have the access via several bridges. We will have 3 bridges there. And the feminist logic used by the artists from this logic there emerged the ideas of healing that is not coming from outward, but the healing that comes from within. The 3 bridges are actually the sign of our own understanding of the body and the representation of a luxury, an abundance that emerges in a completely unexpected places within the society, the poor. You can actually choose from which side you want to approach the garden. We as poor people, we are not used to these abundant things to be so accessible. All right, so several snapshots from our projects, Wigstock, where the whole village decided to create a model with everybody representing metaphors of nature. So the question is whether there's a difference between a village and a city. Perhaps in the long-term understanding of landscape and nature, the painting that emerged out of it was then translated into a mosaic, a garden, a set of gardens that was then managed together by the people. This idea between art, an artistic project, and solar panels, this is quite amazing. The citizens working in working groups, they didn't want to define and refused to define what artistic action is. They just formulated very directly their own requisitions, their own expectations, and art provided unexpected responses. And focusing and streamlining and actually implementing these anarchist thinking brought forward surprises, and it's quite a luxury of receiving something that you didn't even expect to be possible, that wasn't planned, and this also changes our understanding of democratic participation. And perhaps the last thing that I would like to say, if people are to dialogue with each other and to play and work at a level playing field, they also need some material background for this support. We should not give up on very simple wishes. We need a bench. Well, we need a bench, and then that's it. But here, Jakub Szczęsny in Warsaw decided to develop a cooperative bench, which is also a sign for the inhabitants, kind of symbolic sign, because people, as they pass through or pass by, as you can see, this can only work if there are two people who decide to open up this bench, and then they can use it separately, each using their own part, or they can actually put it in a way that would facilitate conversation. And definitely this generates an experience of social structures, of collaboration, which transforms the way the village works when people become less indifferent. Greifswald, another of our projects. We're not using a magic wand provided by art. It's not that the process is going to solve itself, the problem is going to solve itself. It's the collaboration that actually solves the problems. In our project, especially in this one, we decided that we don't want to talk about people in the village, or that people in the village talked about the artists separately, but for everybody to be brave enough to sit together and ask those difficult questions. Use provocation. Provoke us artists to provide art that people want, and how to make this art serious, something that you treat in a serious way. Mutual listening and understanding is a key thing, and I'm not talking about the kind of airy Solomon-like harmony, but about mutual thinking. We need to really think how a community might work.
So thank you very much for this incredible presentation, very vivid presentation of lives, not even projects, but lives that restore our faith in the sense and bringing life back to places that have already been disappearing. Thank you for your last example that you provided. I've seen myself how in Warsaw, my friends carried them, how they transported them very carefully. So this dimension is very, very, of this project is very international, and it gives